Few rivalries in world history have been as dramatic or as strangely respectful as the clash between Richard the Lionheart, the crusading king of England, and Sultan Saladin, the brilliant Muslim commander who had just reclaimed Jerusalem. Their duel during the Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192, was not just a military struggle, it was a meeting of two larger-than-life personalities who admired each other even as they tried to destroy one another. The stage is set, a broken peace. The Holy Land in the late 12th century was a patchwork of uneasy truces between Crusader states and Muslim rulers. For decades, Christians held coastal cities and outposts, while Muslim dynasties controlled most of the interior. The fragile calm shattered in 1187 when Renaud of Chatillon, a reckless Crusader lord, violated a peace agreement by raiding Muslim caravans. It was a provocative act Saladin could not ignore. Saladin, already a seasoned general and ruler of Egypt and Syria, mobilized his forces. That summer he delivered a crushing blow at the Battle of Hattin, near the Sea of Galilee. His army encircled the Crusaders, cut off their water supply, and annihilated them in the scorching heat. Renaud was personally executed, and the True Cross, a relic believed to be part of Jesus' crucifixion cross, fell into Saladin's hands. Within months, Jerusalem itself surrendered, sending shockwaves through Christendom. The call for the Third Crusade. News of Jerusalem's fall electrified Europe. Pope Gregory VIII proclaimed a new crusade. Monarchs from the continent's mightiest realms answered. Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire, who tragically drowned en route. Philip II of France, and a fiery young English prince, soon to be King Richard I. Richard, newly crowned after rebelling against his father Henry II, was a man of contradictions, impetuous, proud, and ruthless in war, but charismatic and gifted as a commander. He burned with the dream of reclaiming the Holy City and the lost True Cross. The long Siege of Acre. When Richard and Philip arrived in the east in 1191, the war had already bogged down at the port city of Acre. Crusaders had besieged it for nearly 2 years but were trapped themselves. Muslim defenders held the walls while Saladin's cavalry harassed the besiegers from behind. Disease and starvation stalked both sides. Philip recovered from illness first and launched heavy bombardments. Richard, despite arriving feverish and bedridden, refused to let the French king steal the glory. From a stretcher, he oversaw the construction of colossal siege engines, cheekily named God's Own Catapult and the Bad Neighbor, and personally fired a crossbow while too weak to stand. The combined assaults finally broke Acre's defenses in July 1191. When the city fell, Richard demanded Saladin return the True Cross, pay a massive ransom in gold, and free Christian captives. Saladin stalled, hoping to negotiate better terms. In a brutal display meant to show strength, Richard executed nearly 2,700 Muslim prisoners outside Acre when the payment deadline lapsed. Saladin retaliated by killing his own Christian captives. It was a grim, bloody opening to their duel. Saladin hunts, Richard endures. With Acre secured, Richard moved south along the Mediterranean coast toward Jaffa, aiming to establish supply bases for an eventual strike at Jerusalem. Saladin shadowed him, waiting for a chance to crush the Crusaders. Richard, however, proved a far more capable general than the Europeans Saladin had beaten at Hattin. He kept his troops well supplied via ships hugging the coast and marched in tight, disciplined columns protected by the sea on one flank. Saladin launched wave after wave of horse archer skirmishes to slow the advance, but Richard's men held firm. The showdown came at the Battle of Arsuf on September 7th, 1191. Saladin's army, more than 25,000 strong, hammered the 12,000 Crusaders with arrows and feints, trying to break their formation. For hours, Richard resisted calls to charge, knowing a single gap could lead to disaster. Finally, when the famed Knights Hospitaller broke ranks under unbearable fire, Richard seized the moment. He ordered a full countercharge at precisely the right time. The sudden cavalry assault smashed Saladin's archers and sent his army reeling. Saladin retreated in shock. His careful tactics had been outmatched. Saladin shifts strategy, war of attrition. Defeated in open battle, Saladin turned to sabotage and patience. He ordered the destruction of ports and fortresses on the road to Jerusalem, forcing Richard to spend months rebuilding supply lines instead of advancing. Frustration grew among the Crusaders who had come to fight, not to dig ditches and repair walls. Twice Richard led his men close enough to glimpse Jerusalem's holy spires, but he refused to launch an assault. His hard logic was simple. Without reliable logistics and reinforcements, any victory would collapse in the desert heat. Many Crusaders saw it as cowardice. Morale faltered. Some knights left for other garrisons. Meanwhile, bad news arrived from Europe. Richard's rival Philip II and his own scheming brother Prince John were plotting against his throne. Ironically, while his allies doubted him, his enemy respected him. During this long stalemate, Richard and Saladin exchanged envoys frequently. Saladin's brother, Aladil, became friendly with Richard, and the English king even suggested a marriage alliance, offering his sister without asking her opinion, of course. Though the deal went nowhere, it signaled a grudging mutual admiration. Richard recognized Saladin as wise and honorable. Saladin acknowledged Richard as the greatest warrior he had ever faced. The dramatic fight for Jaffa. By summer 1192, both men were exhausted but unbroken. Saladin devised a bold stroke. Strike Jaffa, the Crusaders' critical supply hub, while Richard was away gathering reinforcements at Acre. In July, his army stormed the city, breaching its walls and forcing the defenders into a citadel. A desperate messenger raced to Richard with the news. Richard moved with breathtaking speed. He rallied a small strike force, boarded ships, and sailed straight to Jaffa. Arriving to find Saladin's banners flying, he prepared to fight anyway. Wading ashore under enemy fire, Richard personally shot a crossbowman, drew his sword, and led his knights straight into Saladin's camp. Shocked by the audacity of the attack, the Muslims faltered. The trapped Crusader garrison, inspired by the sight of Richard's banner, surged out to join the fight. By nightfall, Richard had retaken the city. Saladin, stunned, withdrew a few miles to regroup. But he was not finished. He massed about 15,000 men, still vastly outnumbering Richard's 2,000 exhausted defenders, for one final push. The last battle and a king's collapse. On August 4th, 1192, Saladin launched his climactic assault on Jaffa. Richard's men, though few, were superbly prepared. He had fortified the beach with makeshift barricades from dismantled ships and arranged his crossbowmen to fire in alternating volleys so arrows rained constantly on the attackers. Saladin's horse archers charged again and again, trying to provoke a rash counterattack. This time, Richard's troops held their discipline. When the Muslim lines finally faltered under relentless bolts, Richard led a sudden cavalry charge with his handful of knights and infantry. The Muslim army broke. Even a last-minute raid inside the city failed. Richard personally rushed back to drive the invaders out. It was an astonishing defense, one of the most celebrated feats of Richard's career. But victory came at a cost. After the battle, the king's body, battered from years of campaigning, succumbed to a high fever. For days, his life hung in the balance. Hearing of his enemy's illness, Saladin showed unexpected compassion. Some accounts say he sent his own physician, along with cooling fruits and ice, to help treat Richard. Whatever the exact details, it is clear both men, after so much bloodshed, respected one another deeply. The Treaty of Jaffa. Neither side could continue the draining war. On September 2nd, 1192, Richard and Saladin agreed to the Treaty of Jaffa. Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control, but Christian pilgrims could visit safely. The Crusaders kept a chain of fortified coastal cities, ensuring their survival in the region for a time. And crucially, both sides promised a 3-year truce. Richard sailed home soon after to defend his embattled throne, while Saladin, worn out after decades of war, died the next year. Both men left enduring legends. Richard as the lion-hearted warrior king, Saladin as the noble and brilliant sultan who humbled Europe yet treated his foes with respect. Legacy of a legendary rivalry. The Richard-Saladin rivalry endures because it was more than just a clash of swords. It was a contest between two extraordinary leaders shaped by different worlds but bound by similar codes of honor and ambition. Richard was reckless yet tactically gifted. Saladin was patient, shrewd, and magnanimous. Each tested the other to the limit. Their story reminds us that even amid brutal medieval warfare, respect could blossom between enemies. The image of Saladin aiding a bedridden Richard, whether literal or symbolic, speaks to a shared warrior ethos transcending religious divide. And while the Third Crusade failed to reclaim Jerusalem, it produced one of the most gripping sagas of the Middle Ages. A duel between a lion-hearted king and a wise sultan, fought across deserts and seas, ending not with conquest but with grudging peace. And that's the incredible story of Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, two enemies who fought with unmatched courage yet learned to respect one another. If you enjoyed this deep dive into medieval history and the epic rivalry that shaped the Crusades, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.